Over the last decade, we have seen significant shifts in the fashion industry. Hello? Today we are going to dive into a really important topic: fast fashion. We'll discuss what fast fashion is, its severe social and environmental impacts, and what we can all do to make a positive change. Hi. I think fast fashion is like when stores get new clothes really quickly. Every time I go to the mall, there are all new things, and the clothes are usually pretty cheap. Is that right? That is exactly right. Fast fashion is driven by consumer demand for trendy, designer-inspired looks at very affordable prices. New collections now emerge every few weeks, making retailers who make clothes cheaply and quickly dominate the market. So they're basically just trying to copy what's popular really fast and sell it cheap. That makes sense, because I see the same styles pop up everywhere quickly. But why is that such a big deal, though? I mean, everyone likes cheap clothes, right? While easy access to stylish clothing seems convenient, this trend has a really devastating social impact, especially on the 75 million garment workers globally. To keep costs low, manufacturing is often moved to countries with cheap labor and limited regulations, leading to worker exploitation. Yeah. I guess exploitation means they aren't treating the workers fairly. Like, they're probably not getting paid very much or working in bad conditions. Is that what you mean? That's precisely what I mean. Many garment workers, some as young as 14, work very long hours for minimal pay, often barely enough to survive. The working conditions are often terrible, including cramped rooms filled with toxic fumes. Wow, I didn't realize it was that serious. So the low prices are mostly because the people making the clothes are being treated really badly? I always thought the low prices were just because they were using cheaper fabric or something. That is certainly a big factor. The regular exposure to those toxic fumes from chemicals used to dye and manufacture clothing also poses a serious health risk. This exposure makes employees vulnerable to serious health problems, and sometimes even terminal illnesses. That sounds really awful. Are there no safety checks or laws that are supposed to protect these workers? Why is this still allowed to happen if it's so dangerous? That's an important question, but it gets into complex international law. The core issue, within the context of fast fashion, is that these manufacturing centers are often in countries with relatively limited work regulations, which makes worker exploitation much easier. Okay, I get that the social impact is really bad for the workers. You also mentioned environmental impacts earlier. What kind of problems does fast fashion cause for the environment? That's a great transition. Now we are moving on to the serious environmental consequences. The clothing industry is one of the most polluting in the world, responsible for almost 10% of all global carbon emissions. We just talked about how the social impact is really bad for the garment workers. One negative effect is that they often work very long hours for extremely low pay, sometimes in really unhealthy conditions because of toxic fumes. Excellent summary. You've clearly grasped the social cost. Now, back to the environment. As demand for fast fashion continues to grow, the pollution caused by clothing manufacturers is predicted to rise by over 60% in the next 10 years. Well, if they are making way more clothes, they have to use more factories, right? And those factories use energy, which probably comes from burning fossil fuels, causing the carbon emissions. Is that the main reason? That is a huge part of it. More production means more energy used, which leads to more emissions. However, the damage doesn't stop once the clothes are made. Consumers are now buying new items more often than ever, and throwing away clothing frequently. So what happens to all those clothes when people throw them out? Do they just end up in giant piles somewhere? They do. Every year, the average American throws out about 30 kilograms of clothing, and most of it ends up in landfills. These discarded clothes are often made of synthetic fabrics, which can take many years to decompose. I guess if they take a long time to decompose, they just take up a lot of space in the landfill. But do they do anything else bad besides just sitting there? That's a good observation about the space they take up. The bigger problem is that while they are decomposing, these unwanted synthetic fabrics continue to release toxic chemicals. These chemicals pollute the air, the soil, and our water supply. Oh, I see. So it's not just the factories causing pollution, but the clothes themselves keep polluting even after we throw them away. So the two main environmental problems are the carbon emissions from making the clothes and the pollution from the clothes sitting in landfills. Is that right? That is a perfect summary of the two main environmental problems. Now that we have covered the complex social and environmental problems rooted in fast fashion, let's move on to the final topic: what everyone can do to help reverse this situation. Okay, so what can we actually do? It seems like such a huge problem. I mean, stopping fast fashion feels impossible since everyone buys those clothes. It can feel overwhelming, but everyone should contribute, and brands need to take action first. It is high time that brands ensured clothes are produced more sustainably, meaning they should take action to protect the environment and workers. If they need to be more sustainable, maybe they could stop using those really toxic chemicals. And also they should probably pay the workers more and make sure the working conditions are safe, like we talked about earlier. Exactly. Brands must ensure that clothes are produced more sustainably, and they must make sure laborers receive fair wages and enjoy better working conditions. Consumers who are aware of these problems can also do their part. A conscious consumer could probably buy clothes less often instead of always wanting new things. And maybe instead of buying new fast fashion, they could buy clothes secondhand from thrift stores or something like that. Those are both excellent ideas that show responsible shopping. We need to remember that our preferences and shopping choices can make a meaningful and permanent difference. The material specifically suggests two main actions for consumers: shopping more responsibly and recycling old clothing. So, to wrap up, fast fashion is bad because of the poor working conditions and low pay for the workers, and it's also really bad for the environment. We can help by buying less, buying used, and recycling. Does recycling old clothing actually make a big difference compared to just throwing it away? That is a perfect summary of everything we covered today. Yes, recycling old clothing makes a big difference because it prevents those synthetic fabrics from ending up in landfills and continuously releasing toxic chemicals. I see. So instead of polluting the ground and water, those clothes can be broken down for new material or given to someone else. That makes sense. Thank you. I learned a lot today about why cheap clothes are actually so expensive for the world. I'm glad you found the lesson helpful. You did a fantastic job understanding these complex issues. We have now covered all the conceptual content in our lesson plan, from defining fast fashion to exploring its social and environmental impacts and discussing solutions. That's great. It was a really interesting lesson since we covered all the main points. What would you suggest I look into next to keep learning about this? Should I focus on the environmental side or the worker side? That's great. It was a very productive session. Since we have finished covering all the points in our material, our lesson on fast fashion is complete.